Hi there. In this video, I'm going to show how to use the scale and translate functions in Khan Academy. Here we go. So we've got some code here. We've got our background color. We've got our fill color. This here, let's see what this is. This is our sun. So there's no comments there. So it'd be nice to have a comment that says this is our sun. And then we've got our clouds here. So this is our left cloud and our right cloud. So you can see there's just a bunch of ellipses, 3 ellipses going together to make the right cloud and 3 ellipses to make the left cloud and so on. Then we've got a car that's kind of like floating off in the middle of the sky, the car body and then the wheels of the car. So there's just 2 rectangles making up the car body, and then there are 2 ellipses making up the wheels, and then we've got a road down here. So first of all, let's organize this a little bit better so that we can say, so we can actually use these kind of comments. If I go / and I can say, this is background, let's say this is background stuff. So that's the sun and the clouds, or I can even say sun and clouds, that might be better. Sun and clouds. And then over here where I get to, so that's sun and clouds, down here I'm get to car. So let's put that all together. So now I've already got some comments for the car body and the car wheel and the left cloud and right cloud and the sun, but I'll show you why I'm doing this in a second. So this one I'll say just car all together, right? And it doesn't matter how many stars you put here, as long as you've got a slash and a star, and the same thing on the other side. And then down at the bottom, so I've got the car and the wheels, and then down here I can just go road. So I'm kind of grouping upon grouping, right? Now, when you use comments like this, these are comments that are ignored by the program by ONOs here. When I use comments like this, notice that there's a little arrow here. So now that I can collapse these little areas or expand what I want to work on. So you can see I got these, so I can, they become collapsible sections. So this is my sun and clouds, my car, and my road. And it just makes it a little bit easier to see the code and what you're doing. Okay, and I've got my background down up here and just no stroke. Now, my car is kind of floating off in the middle of the sky. I want the car to be on the road. So how do I move the car? So I can use something called translate. So if I scroll down here to documentation, you can always find this under transform. There's translate, there's scale, there's rotate. Okay, so I'm going to use the translate command to translate, and it takes an x and y. So how much do you want to translate it up? How much do you want to translate it down? So let's say I don't want to move it left or right at all. So I'll say 0 for the x. I want it to stay where it is. I don't want to move it left or right, but I want to move it down. So let's say I move it like 30. All right, so we see a couple of things. First, I need to move it a lot more than 30. So let's take this 30 and move it more. But what do you notice that's happening? The annoying thing that's happening is that my road, which is just a rectangle down here at the bottom, is also moving with it. So let's set that back to 0. It's moving. So when I use the translate or scale command, it will affect everything below it. Including things I don't want it to affect, like the road. So in order to stop that from happening, we have to use what's called push matrix and pop matrix. So I'm going to go push matrix like that, so capital M. Notice that we're using the camelback format, so push matrix. And where I want it to stop is pop matrix. So because this code down here is the road, and I don't want it, the translate, to affect the road, I put the pop matrix down there. So it's saying stop, this is start. So now that translate will only affect everything until the nearest pop matrix. Okay, so now I'm going to change that back to 30. And you can see now that moves, but the road did not move. That's exactly what I want. And now I can just drag that down. And maybe I wanted the road above it anyway, or sorry, the car above it. So let's take that and move that above the car. So now we can have the car sitting on the road like that. And so now you probably are thinking maybe I didn't need the push matrix and pop matrix because there's no code underneath, and that's true, but it's still good to have there. in case you wanted to add other code later, and then that would always be translated and throw you off. Okay, so there we have it with the translate for that. Now, let's say, for example, you actually wanted to animate this car. So if you wanted to animate this car, that's where the draw function comes in. So just before the car, I'm going to go draw equals function. Now what happens in the draw function is everything, so this, it automatically popped up, but this is the code that you need. So now notice that there's an open and close curly brackets here. Everything inside this function will happen over and over and over again at 60 frames per second. You don't have to know that, but it will actually just redraw over and over and over again. So I'm going to take that code for the car and put it inside the draw function. Now, whenever you open and close these curly brackets, just to let you know that it's inside, we like to indent that code. So we indent that code inside that draw function so that we know that it's inside. It's easy to see. So that's a programming style thing. So we can see all of that code is inside of our draw function. And yeah, so now what's actually happening is the car is actually being drawn not just once, but infinitely many times. It's drawing the car. Once it hits this bottom, it goes back up here, draws the car again, hits the bottom, goes back up here, draws the car again, hits this bottom, goes up here, draws the car again, right? So it's happening over and over and over again. So there's in fact millions of cars being drawn as we speak. In fact, 60 cars per second are being drawn on top of each other. So how do we actually animate the car? There's just duplicate cars being drawn on top of each other. So that's where our variables come in. So let's make a position of the car variable, right? So we'll make a variable called var x car. It's a good variable name in Camelback format. And we'll set that variable to say the initial translation. So right now it's at 0. We didn't translate it at all. So let's set it to 0 to start. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that variable in here. So I'm going to say x car. So now that's the whole point of variables. Wherever this is a substitution. So you see x car, instead of x car, I'm placing the value of 0 because that's its value. Now if I change x car over here to 104, that's the value that's used in here, 104, that substitution. But still not animating. Let's set that back to 0. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go to the bottom of this and say x plus plus, right? X plus plus, and our oh no's is not happy, x is not defined. Because we didn't call it x plus plus, we called it x car. So x car plus plus. All right, now it looks like we're animating, but we're actually not animating. We've drawn a car at a position, at position 0. Then we change the x car to 1 by going x car plus plus. This is the same thing, by the way, as going x car gets x car plus 1. So we take 1, we add it to x car. So before it was 0, now it's 1. So now we draw it at 1. Then it draws the car at position 1 because of this translate. It draws it at position 1. Then it changes to 2. Takes the previous value, which was 1, adds 1 to it, becomes 2, puts it back into x car. So now this is 2. So then it draws it at position 2. So if I restart here, you can see that it's drawing the car over and over and over again. So the problem with this is that we're not actually animating. We're trying to make it seem like we're animating, but we're not actually animating. We're actually duplicating the car and drawing it at a new position each time. So what we need to do is actually erase the last car each time. And how we do that is by drawing the background. So if I take the background here and put it into the draw function before the car, so I'll do that. And now what that does is it erases everything every time. So yes, it does draw the sun and the clouds. Sun and the clouds are now gone, right? Because it draws the sun and the clouds and it draws the road, but then we go into the draw function and it draws the background all over top of everything else that we have drawn before. So if I hit the restart button, now the car is animated. Look at that. But we did lose our other, the sun and the clouds and the road. So what's happening, before we get there, let's explain. So it's drawing the background, then it's drawing the car at position 0, draws the car, increases it to 1, then goes back around, draws the background again. Now the effect of that is erasing the last car. Then again, it draws the new car at position 1, changes this to position 2. Then goes back around, erases the car at position 2, draws the car position 3, and so on and so forth. And that's how you get the car looking like it's moving across the screen. Important to note, so that does work in terms of the animation. So it looks like it's animated, but in fact, and it looks like the car is moving, but in fact what we're doing is we're drawing a car, erasing the car, drawing a car at a new position, erasing that car, drawing a car at a new position, erasing that car. If I take the position of the car, by the way, and put it into this function, then all of a sudden it does not work anymore because it's inside the loop. The draw, we call this the draw loop. So it draws, it sets the variable to 0, it draws the car at position 0, changes it to position 1, but then guess what? We change it back to 0 again, even though we draw the back, so we draw the background, change it back to 0, draw the car at position 0, change it to 1, change it back to 0, draw the car at position 0. So it keeps going around like that, but it keeps alternating between 0 and 1. So that's why it's important that this variable cannot be declared inside the loop. And now you see it's working. Okay. Now if we want the sun and the clouds back in, even though they're not animated, we simply have to take this code for the sun, clouds, and road. I'm going to cut it from there and put it inside the draw loop underneath the background. So I'm going to put it in there. Now again, you can see it's confusing when we don't have good programming style. So because it's inside the draw loop, let's indent it. And you can see now that everything, all of this. So this is the code that's not inside the draw loop, and all of this code is inside the draw loop. And you can see that it's opened here and closed here with a curly bracket and semicolon. Everything inside is indented one level. So now I restart that, and we have our car being animated on the road. Pretty cool. Okay, so now what if I wanted to take the sun at the same time and animate that? Okay, so getting a little bit more advanced here. Then we can talk about the scale function. So I can come up here and go scale. So I'll type scale. Now scale only takes one argument. You can put the second one in if you want to make it just wider, but if I want to scale in proportion, meaning keeping the same, mostly the same size, like the same dimensions, then I will just put in one number. Now the number ranges from 0 to 1. 1, if I put 1 in there, that's the highest I can scale it, and 0, it's the smallest it can go. So for example, if I go 0.5, right, now everything scales down 0.5. But oops, is that what I wanted? I only wanted to scale the sun. Now this is the same problem I had before. Do you remember the solution? If you said push matrix and pop matrix, which I hope you did, then that is the correct answer. We have to put a push matrix here, because I only want to scale the sun, and then a pop matrix at the bottom. And that's why I like these comments here, because it makes it easier to see what we're doing. So a push matrix and a pop matrix. So now I'm going to restart that. But again, I only wanted to, scale the sun and not the left cloud and the right cloud. So let's take that pop matrix and put it just above the clouds here. And there our sun and our clouds are back to normal. And now I can scale my sun. So now that I adjust this, I can scale my sun. So you can see, so I said this was a number between 0 and 1, so that's incorrect as I'm seeing here. You can actually go higher. But yeah, so I can scale my sun. 1.0 is the actual original size, right? Now, that's still not animated, but I am already inside the draw loop. So how do I animate the sun? If you said create another variable, that is the perfect answer. So let's say size of sun. and I can go var, let's call it sun size. Now we can set sun size to 1.0 or just 1. I don't have to put that in there. And I can change now the scale factor to sun size. And of course nothing changes because it was 1 before and now it's still 1. But now here, every time through the loop, so let's say we want the sun to get a little bit smaller each time. Right, so I can go down to the bottom of this, just where I'm changing the position of the car, and I can go sun size. Now, if I wanted to get smaller, I can go minus minus, but minus minus will basically make it disappear because it's -1, and so it's going all the way down to 0 and then negative beyond that. So instead of going minus minus, I can go sun size equals sun size minus, let's say 0.1. Now I hit the restart button over here. Notice that when I included the draw function in here, by the way, the restart button shows up. So I'm going to hit that restart button, and you can see now the sun is decreasing in size, but still a little too fast. So maybe I can go 0.01. Let's try that. Now you can see the sun is also being animated separately from the car. Maybe even 0.01. Let's try that. Now you can see the sun is getting smaller each time. Now, in a much slower rate. Now, you can take this and make a shortcut out of it, but you can't go minus minus because minus minus automatically does -1, just like plus plus automatically does +1. So, but there is a shortcut for this. Take the minus sign, put it to the left of the equal sign, and then you don't have to write this again. So it's minus equals 0.01, and that does the exact same thing. So, hopefully you understood, just to review. We reviewed how to make an animation. We talked about the translate function. So translate. Now remember, when you do use the translate, and you can translate with the y as well, just make a variable for the y variable. Remember to put a push matrix and a pop matrix around everything that you want that translate to affect. So if you don't want it to affect other code, then make sure you do that. Same thing with scale. Scale just takes one number if you want it to scale proportionally, and you should put a push matrix and a pop matrix around that so that it just scales this code and not everything below it. We put everything into the draw function that we want to draw so that the background will draw over top of our previous items, so we can erase those. So even the items that we're not animating should be in the draw function, otherwise they'll only be drawn once and then they'll immediately be drawn over top of. So we put those back into the draw function as well, even if we're not animating them. And the stuff that we're animating, we can use the variables to control it, making sure the variables are declared before and then are updated each time through the draw function. Hope that makes sense. And in the next video, I can show you how to loop the car. So the car will go off the screen, it'll come back, and the same thing with the sun.